and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who, as the midnight moon rises on black wings, so makes his sacrifice and awaits the light at the end.
Tim Longo. Yeah.
His mother, what's mother whatever? Is
Miranda?
she going to protect us? Mother Miranda. I could not remember it today. I was like, what was her name again?
Yeah,
Mother Martha May, Marcy Marlene.
There's a few figures in the game that, I guess there's the Calamity Nolan was trying to get me to understand how to pronounce the lady in the castle.
Dimitrescu.
Yeah, I think the U is silent, but
it's pronounced Dimitrescu or something like that.
Dimitrescu. Yeah. Anyway, I just couldn't.
She is so cool. I can't wait to get to that. Oh my god. Anyway, we are doing a little bonus episode. We didn't say last week, and so we should probably say now. We took a look over the last couple of days at Resident Evil Village to look at a first-person Resident Evil, the next evolution, which started in 7. So just to set people in the game we're actually talking about. But yes, Lady Dimitrescu. I don't want to spoil anything about her castle or anything that's going on in there, but I was loving it, and it made me really want to continue playing. I remember a lot of the dialogue about the game being like that part of the game was particularly excellent, and that character in particular was really interesting, which I totally get. So I'm very curious now to play more of it. Also, her daughters are wonderfully terrifying. So, very
daughters.
Good. Yep, very good stuff. Very good stuff. Really kind of amazing, just enemies and I don't know. You're gonna really enjoy like the Metal Gear Solidness of at least one of her daughters, in terms of being really kind of a weird boss, sort of sub boss, but also more systemic than not super set piecey, but like in other spaces that you're in. Yeah, I'm way ahead of where we should be talking about, but man, that's what I was last playing. I was just like, oh, I want to keep going, but I had too many other things to do over the weekend. So yeah, it really grabbed me. I'm really looking forward to with our break coming up, and generally kind of slowing down a little bit of work to have more time to play a couple of games. And this is one that I was like, oh, I hadn't planned on playing this, but now this is clearly the thing I'm going to need to finish. So, really, really interesting stuff. But we should start closer to the beginning, probably. So.
Yeah, I think I ended up playing only about 2 hours. So it got me, I think technically to this, I've found 2, I'm not to the castle yet. I've found 2 typewriters. And I have the 2 crests to get me through the gate, I think. So I guess I'm maybe on my way there. I don't know how much farther I have.
That's where I ended up going next. And there's I don't want to spoil it for you, but there is another set piece that happens basically soon after you go in there that kind of launches the next major chapter. Even though I don't think this game has chapters in the way that RE4 did. I think it's more continuous experience for reasons. But so we should start off, I guess. I want to start at the beginning because this game starts in such a strange way. In fact, in my notes, I remarked, I would like to spend more time in this world, please. Of course, that was before I met Lady Dimitrescu. So I was, I would also like to spend more time in that world. So, but it's got this weird, literally papercraft at first, and then it kind of becomes a 3D papercraft. It's just a cinematic, it's just a cutscene.
But it's in this very stylized, for those who haven't played it, it's a very stylized, so when on the stream, so I ended up streaming it as just a surprise stream because I was like, well, why not? Modern game, etc. And some folks came on. Thanks for joining me. This was Sunday night, and I started the game, and a couple people had played it and a couple people hadn't. And Lonely Bob was like, I think you started the wrong game. I think this is an ad for another game. Or like we were all really confused. I was like, wait, what? And I literally for a second was like, I think I started the wrong executable or something.
Yeah.
And
even though you had been at a menu screen that said Resident Evil Village and hit start game, I watched the beginning of your stream because I was kind of curious how you would react. And people were kind of coming in, right? They weren't there at the very, very beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's somebody who was like, this looks like Inside, maybe. I haven't played
Limbo,
that either. But, or Limbo.
Yeah.
Same studio. But yeah. So it was like, no, this is it.
The game. Yeah.
And
interesting.
It ends up being like this storybook that Mia, who is Ethan Winter's wife, is reading to their daughter, who's maybe 6 months, I guess, something like that. Yes, he specifically says she's only 6 months. You can't read her. It's a good thing she can't understand that scary book you're reading. It's a weird fable about a little girl and her, these monsters basically she encounters who each sacrifice something and give her something. And then she assumes when she meets the fourth one that she's being given a gift, and instead she takes something that isn't hers. And she misinterprets what's going on. Maybe that was the manipulation all along. It's hard to say. And then meets a truly frightening witch creature or something like that. And it's a local tale. And then you go back to the being basically an Ethan, right? You're Ethan, and you're seeing her read this story to the baby. And I will say, I find the baby supremely creepy. And I also, having been in that like non-realistic rendering world, was like, oh, now we're back in realism. yeah. Photorealism attempting at it. Yeah. It was a very jarring. I mean, I definitely appreciated it because it literally shows her closing the book, so to speak, right? And you see the cover of the book and the title, and so you have a nice connection point. But I know a little bit about what 7 is about, which as a quick aside, by the way, was 7 not really 7? Is it sort of a reboot? Like, is it canonically in order of, is it a game meant to be after 6? Or, because it's also called just Resident Evil Biohazard. It's not really, 7 is sort of in the title because of the letters, but it's not. I don't know. Yeah, I think people generally refer to it as RE7, though.
Yeah, I guess they do, but I guess that's fair. I guess people do refer to it, but is that appropriate to refer to it as?
Well, I mean, it has characters. We meet a character who is in the main
Chris,
series, right? Chris.
But is he the Chris after 5 and 6? So 5 and 6 has occurred. I believe he is.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know because I don't like, the stories of these games do not stick with me, but and I'm not, like I said, I'm not even sure if or how much of 6 I played. So I really can't tell you for sure that that is true, but I believe it to be true.
Does Wesker show up in 7?
God, it was just 2 years ago, and I have no idea.
Well, I'm about to find out, but anyway. Yeah, so I guess where I was going with that is just like, I knew a little bit about that game. I knew about the first-person perspective. I knew about the sort of like they slowed down the pace. Things got way more terrifying. There's a lot of
he receives an indirect mention in RE7. So,
okay,
that's all I can really help you with.
I'll look at a timeline before I get too deep, and just so I know, because I did skip 6. But anyway, I just didn't know what I was going into with 8, and I think just that opening section, both the house scene and then also after the accident and you're just in the snow and stuff, I was just like, wow, this is not what I guess it just was going further than I realized that they went, as far as like how to kind of reimagine the way that they present it. Obviously a lot of the similar themes and general construct of things, and it still feels enough like a Resident Evil game to me to fit within things for sure, but it's also enough of a spiritual reboot where I really appreciate it. And the concept of being in their apartment or whatever, their house in the beginning, and just walking around, and obviously being influenced by a lot of games that were fooling with that. I mean, Last of Us 2 has a great sequence similar to that in the beginning.
Well, and indies, you know.
In indies,
Gone Home.
Gone
right?
Home, walking simulator kind of stuff. And
right. Dear Esther, and all of those, for sure.
I was going to say Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but
not that,
not that one. But that
not
would be
sleeping with
game.
the young professor. well, he's outside drinking. Nope.
Yeah.
What Remains of Edith Finch.
What Remains of Edith Finch. Yeah. So anyway, so that was all. It was just a nice surprise is all, just sort of the presentation of that. And it's a good buildup for survival horror. The thing that on the stream that everyone kept saying, which I still have never played it for obvious reasons, is people kept bringing up PT who hadn't played this one. Right. They're like, oh yeah, a lot of PT vibes. And I kind of know what they mean by that, and I know you
even more strongly in 7, in my opinion. I mean, there is a moment, I think, when, I can't remember if it's like upstairs or downstairs, where I look down something and I'm like, oh man, definite sudden flashback to to the beginning of PT or something. PT all takes place in one hallway, more or less. I mean, there's a couple side rooms and stuff like that open at different times, but fundamentally it's like you go up this hallway, take a right turn, go down that hallway, and then descend some stairs and start again. And it just keeps changing as you play it. It's really remarkable, and I should bring my PS4 up to you at some point so you can play it. I'll stand nearby with a flashlight or I don't know, comfort pillow or something, so you can take breaks, because I still have it. Yeah, it's still installed on my machine. I found it tremendously anxiety provoking. Just like, it was so terrifying.
I had a hard time with 8 last night. I mean,
it's super intense. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I'll say about the photorealism is it still makes me distracted.
Yeah, it's not.
Because I look at a perfect example is like this Oriental rug runner, a long, narrow rug, right? A runner is what that's called. Mm-hmm. It's like, 12 to 15 feet long and like 3 feet wide. And it's weirdly kinked in a way that no actual Oriental rug would be. Like, it would have to be so flimsy. And of course, Oriental rugs are too thick for that. Like, it just wouldn't, and I'm so, those little details I look at and go, that's wrong. Just immediately look at it and like, no rug bends that way, and then of course I immediately then consciously start picking out things. Like, I didn't even do that. Like, I didn't look at it and go, what is wrong with that? I just looked at it and I just immediately was like, oh, ugh, I just had this uncanny valley from a rug, which is why, contrasting that so closely with the non-realistic cinematic, obviously, animation that happened before, I was just like, I want the animation. So that was definitely a moment. And I actually would like to take that a little further, because I think one of the things I do really appreciate the high res of modern games. I do think it's really, really pretty. But the thing that really always I appreciate, I think, when we contrast it, especially so directly with RE4, is the clarity of what objects are interactable and not in RE4. Like, you can tell the barrels are there to be smashed. You can tell the boxes are there to be smashed. Here, you're sort of in this weird vision mode where everything you're going to know to interact with is painted yellow somewhere, right? Yeah. I mean, this is very common with...
Or you get the little button
Tomb Raider or Uncharted. Oh, yeah, and you get those if you get close enough, right, as well. Yeah. So it's like an additional layer on top of like this already weird... And I say vision mode because it really is like you're in a vision mode where it's like, this is important, but not in a totally overbearing, like, doesn't look realistic way. It's more like you're like attuning yourself to see these things in the environment in the way that is just completely clear in older games and is like, yes, we're a game, right? So it's like, I don't know. I was just kind of thinking about that last night, going so starkly from one to the other. Want something so unrealistic to something so realistic, despite its sort of uncanny modeling in places. I don't know. It just struck me at the time, just like, wow, there's something I feel we lose, right, in the clarity, especially in these survival horror games where there's like, I'm scrambling for stuff and I want to feel like I look around and I know I can at least try something. And here I'm too terrified to be able to feel that. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe that's good because it's a horror game.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm kind of not, I don't know. I'm just kind of at 6s and 7s about the whole thing, not really sure what I want. But there's just these weird compromises, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point about the contrast of the opening sequence, because that does put it in stark relief much more than normal. Because I think it's just, we talk about this in our day jobs as well as on the podcast, right? Of sort of like the photorealism is a slippery slope, and it always has been for whatever era you're talking about. And we can look back and play RE4 and distinguish the barrels, but at the time there was this sense of like, wow, that, we're really getting there, kind of.
Yeah.
So it's that always, but I think to your point, I think it is a good point that, and this is why CG cutscenes always bug me too, right? And especially, we've talked about this in the past ones, especially with probably RE1, to be honest, and others. And that's why I appreciated Metal Gear back in the day, because they did all their cinematics, even though there were a lot of cinematics, they were done in engine. So there wasn't that breaking. And that was constantly a debate that I would have on projects of that. I mean, you remember, right? It's like, when were we ready to make our cutscenes in engine versus CG? And that contrast is so stark that it just pulls you out of it. And once we got to a point where whatever content of the game you start with is pulling you into whatever this form of reality is, you buy everything after it because you now know what the baseline is. It's like, okay, the baseline for this is it's this style. It's this photorealism from 2010. And when I play it, I'm kind of just all in because it's all consistent or whatever, right? But to your point, you throw in this stylized weird thing and you're like, oh yeah, this is, the first thing you see is Mia on the couch reading the book, and she's closing the book, and you look at her face and you're like, that is Uncanny Valley face right there. Yeah. Like that is like, there's no way around it. While if they had just started with that, maybe it would have been less gotten into the world.
Would have gotten over it pretty quick. Yeah.
You just accept it or something. But but I mean, the other thing to your point about the rug is interesting, that because the house that you start in is also a regular house, and we can relate to it a lot more. It's like, oh, it's a regular house. But like when you get to the village, it's like, I've never been in a village like that. I can't relate.
Yeah, it's also so run down too. Yeah, that it's so run down that it's like, it's acceptable that things are weird, right? Or janky, that it's, and that's also true of like the Ganados, village and everything at the beginning of 4. So I like, I'm kind of okay with all that. Yeah. It is kind of,
there's a fantasy fulfillment of like putting yourself into a survival horror situation where you're like, oh yeah, I want a rundown village that's super creepy because I'm never going to go to one. So it's like, I don't care what, just do whatever you're going to do with the set dressing, etc. It's like, have fun. And I think they nail it in this. I mean, I was just like, anyway, we'll get to the village, I guess, in a bit, but I guess I didn't know, I don't know if this was their goal. I don't know, maybe if 7 does some of the same stuff, but this feels like a spiritual successor to 4 because of the way that it starts. Like, and even the sort of big set piece that happens when you're introduced to the big guy who pounds down with his big hammer or whatever. You're like, wow, this is like a modern version of what we just played. Like, that's amazing.
I agree with all of that. I mean, I think, there's a similar everyman, which is to say kind of boring thing about the characters as well. Yeah. Ethan Winters, who is the protagonist of 7 as well. But like, I literally forgot like I had no idea. Like if you had said to me who's the protagonist of RE7, I wouldn't have even been able to say gender wise. Like it was like I have no idea. Although once I did watch the sort of review video or whatever story video for RE7 to like catch you up on the story, I was like, oh, that's right, I was there to deal with Mia. Right, like I totally forgot all of that stuff. I do remember a lot about that game, but like again, the story stuff just kind of goes in one ear out the other.
Ethan is so far extremely forgettable, though. Like,
completely.
He's just a cipher. Like he's not even a character. I feel like.
Yeah.
Although he has there's some humdinger lines in there. What is the one I wrote down? I forget when the why does this keep happening?
Exactly. Yeah. Why does this keep happening to me when she falls down into the fire?
Dude, why is this happening?
Why does this happen to you? So I mean, Leon and him are kind of similar in that way. Leon, I think because you see him, he's more memorable just because you can fix what does this guy look like, and I honestly, I really wanted, because there was a bathroom or something in the house with a mirror, but it doesn't actually reflect. I really wanted it to. I really wanted to see who the heck I was supposed to be, to like help me situate myself in the world. Like, who am I? I think really is kind of important. And I don't know how I feel about first person games that don't give you a specific identity. I know it's kind of the thing, it's kind of the thing that we do, that we assume that players want to put themselves in there, but I'm not sure that's what I want. So I don't know.
And the thing is they don't like. I like when people commit to the first person like purity of it, but it's the age for me. It's the problem of like they probably shouldn't talk. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to do it, you should go all the way with it. And when you have them talking and having lines like, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and "My wife and baby," it's like, okay, well, this is a dude that is a white dude and
a generic dude, right?
Generic white dude. It's like you're gonna go
age appropriate character delivery device, I believe is the phrase we're looking for.
Right. I mean, you technically see Gordon Freeman's face on the box, sort of, but it's he's very much more of a blank slate. But anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. Or see, and then, but my counter theory is like go all the way and have them be a real character. So it's clear that this person would say these specific things and not total generic guy.
Yeah,
like,
no, good.
I love that in Alien Isolation, which is also a first person game, you're playing a very specific person, which I guess is Ripley's daughter, maybe?
Yeah. It's your daughter.
Right. You're playing this very specific person, right, who has a specific connection to this mythos or whatever, right? And he just feels like, and here's this, generic guy.
But then some stuff happens.
Yeah, it does. Why don't you tell us what stuff happens?
Well, you put the baby to bed, you go back to the kitchen, there's some soup things happening, and an argument at the table, I think. They argue about something. They're kind of alluding to some of the past, I think.
He wants to... He hasn't been able to put away his misgivings about RE7. Basically.
Some stuff happened, right. Yeah. And he's like, how could we forget that? I feel like Mia's acting weird kind of the whole time. So I'm going to start playing 7 tonight. So I don't know maybe I'll find out. Maybe she's got some stuff going
I think she has some specific reasons why she'd particularly want to forget it. And I think that'll come out. But it is, it's not terrible to me that they're kind of these two people who are basically on opposite sides of this divide of like what they want to do with this past.
Yeah. No, I
actually think that's really interesting. Unfortunately, she's then gunned down, right? So in extremely bloody, really over the top kind of fashion, just like
it felt a little unnecessary. Yeah.
Yeah, a little.
They had that classic movie moment where the first shot happens, right, and it hits her, and there's this sort of moment of like, what just happened? That's just a very common
was that her
trope.
wine glass or whatever? Because she's got wine right in front of her as well. So
because it's silenced or something, or you're like not quite sure what happened, and then
I even feel like the glass breaks. So like you have the sense of like, oh, that could be the wine bottle. What happened?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Or the wine glass rather.
There's also, you find out if you're really hunting and pecking, I think you find out a little bit of like might be something up with the baby Rose. Like they had to do some tests on her for some fungal something or other.
Yes.
And so I'm like, what's that all about? And
you're about to play.
I can assume assume that has to do with 7. So anyway, so they're arguing about that, and then some soldiers come in, and then Chris Redfield
appears.
Chris, it's good old Chris.
Ethan, there's another tidbit that Ethan has had like military training in the meantime, like since 7.
Okay.
There's a little note somewhere.
They didn't mention that, but I didn't really pick up on that being important. But so he was not a military guy in 7?
I guess not. Like, again, guy, like, who is this guy? Like, he's nobody to me, So it's like, oh, okay, I can believe it. They could tell me either way. Like, they could tell me he was, a ninja, and I'd go, yeah, okay, I guess he was a ninja, and then, or they could tell me, oh yeah, the guy couldn't tie his shoes, and I'd also go, yeah, okay, So I
feel like that was based on feedback they got from 7. They're like, yeah, this guy just doesn't seem capable enough. It's like, okay, well, let's give him some training in the meantime to make him more badass.
We'll just make it a one line. Anyway, so I mean, I do appreciate all the very high degree of craft of all of that. I do think
it's amazing.
It's really astonishing. Yeah, they're using the mega scans, the Quixel mega scans. I don't know if you saw that in the opening.
No.
They use that.
That's how they're doing that. Okay.
Yeah, to make it so.
That engine's impressive. I know people have been talking about it, especially with like the RE2 remake, which I haven't played. That engine. It's also the one they use for Monster Hunter, I think, which I have played a lot of Monster Hunter World. And it's just, I mean, that engine's getting better and better, and their Resident Evil games specifically, I feel like they're really at top of their game, that studio / team / whomever. Capcom, I don't know. Capcom is kind of, I feel like they've had some ups and downs over the years, and I feel like they're definitely on an up right now with the last string of things. But yeah, it is an impressive. I mean, the lighting is amazing. The visual effects, I think the audio is really good. And so a couple people made comments, which happens throughout the whole sequence on the stream, which I appreciated. Somebody said that it was, I think this was Artemis that said, it feels like a very claustrophobic game. A lot of the time, and I think a lot of that is the FOV they choose in the first person. Like it so when things get in your face, they're really in your face, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but they're also not afraid of not having music all the time, right? Like there's a lot of silence in there.
Yeah, when you're crunching through the snow, so there's this car out, you're like, I guess you're being transported away because you survived the fusillade of bullets that came into your house, but your wife did not. And, you're like, Mia, get down. And you dive to the floor. You don't grab her and pull her to the floor. There's a movie about this from a force majeure a few years ago, similar situation. But not bullets, an avalanche. Anyway, they're transporting you and there's an accident, and it sets up.
There's actually orders too.
Within, I think
you find orders, right?
There's a phone and they're telling you what's going on, and
they didn't want Mia to survive, but they wanted you and the baby to survive, or something.
Right. So you've crashed, and that's the section where I think it starts. You're crunching through snow, and as you point out, with the field of view, the branches are like, whacking you in the face, right? I mean, it's like it feels very, very, very effective, because you've also got that weird. That flashlight lighting of like, I can see a lot of snow close, and then it's just darkness. Mm-hmm. And that is just that's very terrifying.
Very, very good. And then the audio work in that sequence, it's all linear, of course, but it just, the snow, and then you hear some movement and some rustling and some grunts in the distance, and
crows.
crows. Yeah, just utterly terrifying. And I was just wide-eyed the whole time. It was just like, and going very slowly. It's like not that long of a section, but it felt like forever to walk through it. So yeah, very effective.
It's like being in a strange place, right, at night. Like, if you're staying at somebody's house or something like that, you've seen it in the daytime, but like you get up and you have to go to the bathroom and it's like downstairs or something. You're like, terrified. Like, it's just, it's just eerie and scary. You don't know the sounds. Like, it all is just like a little off-putting. Terrifying would be too strong, but like, especially as a kid, like you're thinking about it, like when you're a child and you have that experience where you can see the nightlight at the end of the hall or whatever for the bathroom, but like getting there, is a long distance. It feels like, stuff like that. I definitely
I think we're bringing up some
deep-seated stuff.
Yeah, I was like, we got some.
Let me lean back on my couch here. But yeah,
this game is a lot about that too, I think. I mean, the other note that I wrote down. Oops, sorry about my mic. But the other note I wrote down that I didn't realize is it's a lot more psychological horror than the past Resident Evil games too. They're playing a lot of those sort of, which I think is why people maybe bring up PT. Because there's a lot of like nothing and a lot of like opening an empty drawer and then a sound over here, but nothing happens for a long time.
Right.
Suspense and just like mind games and, just simple things.
Perfect example, forwarding ahead, is there's a pathway up to Louisa's, which is where you basically ended, where there's a path and then I don't know if there's a crash tractor or something like that, and there's fields on either side, and the grass in the fields is moving. Yeah. And you can hear noises in there, but at the same time I was like, are they just messing with me? Like, I didn't know. Like, I had no idea if they were just messing with me. And so it made it more terrifying because as a longtime player, as a developer, I was like, this could just be nothing, that they're just heightening what's happening, or it could be something. And being in that space of like, I don't know which one it is, was just terrifying in the moment of like, I don't know how bad this is going to be going in there, because of course you have to, which is like the other pressure of like, no, this thing that's really disturbing you have to go through it. So that's, that's the other part of it, is the forward pressure of like, your goal, sorry, it's on the other side of this very, very unsettling thing. So good luck. I mean, that's like going through the forest. It's the same way. Like, this is the only place to go. So I guess, sorry, so they've gotten very, very good at doing these things. Right. And they know how to do these things now. And I think that's what you get when you're able to like work at something like this for so long.
Well, the other, to that point, the interesting thing that, and some folks on the stream were also bringing up RE5 as kind of being one of their favorites. And I was thinking back to 5, which is very much an action game. And then I think 6 kind of continued that and maybe even went a little too far. But it's interesting to go from 4, which we just finished, to think about 5, think about probably where, if I can kind of guess where 6 kind of lands. I think it's a mess story-wise and character-wise, but it's in the sort of same vein. And then to see 7, and what they assessed were their shortcomings up to 6, and what they, it's just fascinating to me specifically because of some of the stuff I've done in the past, where you kind of think about, okay, so we're here. What should we do? Like, what do we do next? Like, what do we focus on? And it's still a fairly clean, like when there are mechanically action-centric sections, it's still fairly good compared to what I think they've had in the past sometimes, as far as like first-person shooter and things like that, right? So it's like, I'm playing on PC, so maybe it's a little different, but
no, I mean it held up on PS4 for me.
Yeah, so I'm sure it did, and so but for the most part, it's a lot slower game. It's a lot, at least right now, it's a lot more methodical. There's the pacing is different. It's not an action game. Right. It's not where definitely where 5 went, and I assume where 6 goes. 4 is sort of on its way, I think, but I still feel like obviously we talk loads about 4 in positive ways for the series. I still feel like 4 is a really good sweet spot of a combo, and 5, though I enjoyed playing 5, I think it kind of went maybe a little too far, even though I know people love it.
And this feels like a continuation of 4 in that way. To me as well. Even though it's first person, not third, and all that stuff, it still feels like it's in the right space for that. Yeah.
I think I don't know. I actually need to test this. I don't know if you slow way down when you go ADS, but I think you might. So it's not gun and run, but it is like when you're committing to a shot, you can't really do much, right? You have to. Yeah, it's definitely
fun. Having just played 4, I pretty much stop when I'm aiming.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I know that I can. I know that I can move, but I don't. So I generally will find in the set piece moments like a space to be, and this is where I make my stand. There's a place where you get locked in a house, and I think basically I'm blowing away these guys, and then the dude with the hammer shows up and just knocks the roof off and knocks you out of the building and slams you through a wall and stuff. And I'm like, uh-oh, I don't know what's going to happen now. I mean, I was definitely very, very terrified. And they kind of get there 2 ways. One is sort of this just sort of unsettling of the settlingness of the scene. I mean, you have bullets, but you don't have a ton.
Oh no! So the resource management's very good so far.
Yeah, and so you're starting to run out low, and you're like, there's still a lot of guys here. You're like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I run out. I guess I'll switch to this puny carving knife.
I was using the knife for most of that sequence, just so you know.
Were you? No, I was not.
I went down to the basement and hid in a corner underneath the house as they were coming in. I bottlenecked them, and I never saw the roof thing you just talked about. And I went out this sort of side hole, and then Nolan thought that it's maybe a 4-minute timer, and so you just have to survive for 4 minutes, and then when you leave the house, everything happens.
Yeah, maybe that's how it happened, and I'm just kind of reading more into how I remember it. Yeah. That's how it felt to me. So let's just say that,
great. Yeah.
Because I think I did, I definitely survived for however long or whatever, and but I was very as you had pointed out in pre-show, one enemy feels pretty terrifying. Yeah. So it's and now I've got them, they're all over the place. I'd been seeing them on the rooftops, and I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go?
You feel hopeless.
Yeah, it feels oh man, I can't just take pot shots at them from here. I'll never hit them all. I don't want to draw them down to me. They seem like they're leaving me alone. I mean, it's just it's very suspenseful throughout all of that, just in this little village section.
That sequence is, really good. And I agree. It's it is that outnumbered sort of well, how am I ever going to do anything here? That's why I think I kind of went down into the basement. I was like, I'm just going to hover in this corner and just hope. And I just held up my arms and I was just slashing with the knife because I'd run out. And I think I had gone down to red. I don't quite understand the mechanic for blocking. You can hold your hands up and I think it helps, but
you take less damage.
Okay. They were grabbing.
Is what it says in the manual. So.
Oh, okay. Because they were chomping on me quite a bit, and and I had some health, I think, so I took that. But then I left through that hole, and then sort of that's when the scripted sort of stuff started happening, and then he comes down, huge character. It definitely was reminiscent, but even cooler than of the Mendez. Is that his name from?
Yeah, Mendez. Yeah.
And that whole sequence just great. And then the bell rings, and I immediately was like, it's RE4. It's happening. We're here. There's a village. We're in the village. And it, and I kind of was obviously it helps that we just played the game, but I was sort of transformed or transported back to that again, and it felt like a modern, realization of that in a really good way. But I love that one enemy, at least at this point, I hope maybe we get more powerful, but maybe not. That one enemy is so terrifying, and their animations are great. Like they're very menacing. And they kind of just look at you like you're meat, like there's nothing you can do. And they kind of move in cool ways. And they have a little bit of that sort of juking that they do in 4 as well. And they've always done to kind of mess with you.
Yeah, you'll see more of that with some more enemies down the line. I mean, I think you've got a mix basically of like, there are some that feel not terribly terrifying. They still move and jerk around and stuff like that, which is good. But then you'll have like one of the sisters that I alluded to. I don't know if that was on air or pre-show, but that is, genuinely like, oh man, but still fits systemically, which is something they've been doing for different things. They did it with one of the remakes, that you have a tyrant type, Mr. X, I think his name is, that follows you all the time.
With 2, yeah.
Yeah, and then in 7, there are characters like that are a character like that, I guess, that's kind of following you around that you're very powerless against. I feel like it's sort of a mix of that. Like they're characters that you'll be able to defeat. So they're not impervious, and you have ways to deal with them short term that are coming up for you that I loved. I wish we had a chance to talk about them, but because I think that's really a really effective way to balance the terror and power empowerment. That sometimes it goes too far towards the empowerment, and like 5 and 6, I guess, I think are probably more in that direction. Right. And that 4 is moving in that direction. So I think that like here you've got like this, I can't really deal with this creature. It's going to systemically pursue me, but it's not invincible either, like some of the other ones have been. So they're terrifying for their own reasons, but this is like finding that edge between the two, I think, which was really cool and impressive in the first few hours of play. So, yeah. I love some of the characters I've seen. I'm just totally like, oh my God, this is so cool. So definitely look forward to you getting to more of this later. So,
yeah. Yeah. And I just, I know that the village part of this game is, I mean, it's called Village, but I know the castle is a big deal and it definitely expands to other locations. But I do, again, we talked about this with the 4 series. I do really enjoy the structural sort of the aspects of the village that they have here. There's some linear sections, it seems like, for sure, but there's definitely, you're supposed to be able to go back to some of the places I think you've gone, and you open some one-way gates and things like that. And I just love that they're sticking with that model. Some of the stuff that they were starting to do, and I
did you find anything to lower the barrels into the well?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay,
no.
So my assumption is that we are going to come back with that, like, because I didn't find it, and it feels like other things are clearly, like the knife, for example, is clearly on the path, right? You have to find the knife, and so it feels like they would have done something with the well. So I feel like we are, like, some of that, as I mentioned,
those are left unexplored.
Definitely off air, is that there's some open world ish elements. I don't know if it's purely like you can go anywhere, but it does feel a little bit more like you're going to be able to come back here later, which is not always the case. Like it wasn't in 4, for example. So
right. Yeah,
there's points of no return. Yeah.
Fast travel then, or something like that. I wonder how they handle that, but or maybe the castle.
I hope not.
The way as it looks, yeah.
But I mean, I think there's some like, oh yeah, it's just from here to there. Like it feels like it's far, far away, but it's not really far, far away. Or like it's abstracted. It's like you go through this gate, and really you're going up a long path in theory, or something like. Yeah. And they're just cutting that part out or something. I don't know.
But the overall pacing and the slowness of it, at least so far in the early sections, I really appreciate it, because I do love that they have kind of returned back to that, and that I mean, just going through hallways, and like even in the early, there's a house or a couple houses you go through, and then you kind of go down into the basement, and then you open a cabinet, and the rat comes out, and then you go back. It's like all you had to do was open that cabinet, apparently. But it's obviously it's economy of space for sure, but it just builds tension so much better than what they've done in the past. And I assume that 7 is doing a lot of that same stuff, just less with more. And it just makes it sets it more in the survival horror than action, realm. And I just appreciate that they're returning to that. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is that with the characters and the enemies, and I remember it kind of almost being a big part of the marketing push for 7, but they've really invested in faces specifically. Yeah. And obviously because it's first person. And so because you don't see your character and you don't see your face, they're really like, you see a lot of faces and they're close to you and they are expressing, quite elaborately. Even the enemies, right? When oh man, it's just so much production value is put into even an enemy biting your shoulder or something. Oh, and then also
or your fingers,
or your fingers, right? And I missed it, but Calamity pointed out the number of fingers you have left after that happens, which is 8. So that's a good.
Plus, it also bites off your ring finger, right? So
but then you're
getting severed from Mia another way or something. I think his ring,
the ring's still there, I think. Yeah, but it's clearly hanging
definitely
on.
Highlights it. Yeah.
Pretty good. Tongue in cheek there. Yeah. But I just think that's the face thing. I bring it up, and because it's such an investment from a development standpoint. In a pipeline and process and creation standpoint to go to focus on that. But it's a good example of prioritizing the right thing for this game.
Right.
And I think it really pays off. There's the whole sequence when you go to that house that you were mentioning with all those NPCs and all the horrific things happen there with the dad who, whatever, turns and stuff. But that's there's a lot of expression going on with all of those characters, and you get pretty close to them, and it's just really impressive. It just feels like a really efficient and kind of, I don't know what I want to say, but efficient and economically made game. Like it's focusing on the right stuff. And it is about doing that over and over again, and for a team, and obviously a lot of people have come and gone since 4, but if there's anybody left from 4, maybe who knows, but they definitely have been iterating. And that's another reason why I kind of wanted to, hopefully we'll eventually play the 2 remake, because that feels like, a more direct, response to 4, it sounds like, because it is picking up where 5 and 6 kind of went and making a really good version of that kind of game versus what 7 is.
Right.
Because it's third person, and it's gun and run and that kind of stuff, I think. But it has.
Yeah, no, I also have that one, and I'm just now like, how much Resident Evil can I fit in between now and the new year when I go back to work?
Wow,
or whatever.
That would be a lot.
So, yeah. I mean, I have other things I definitely want to play, but it's like this is the time of year when I typically have a little more time to play, just because we have, we'll have time off between Christmas and New Year's, and that's a time where I'll be like, you know what, I'll play 5 hours of games, in a given day, and then I'll just read the rest of the time or something. But so I mean, that's typically how my gaming goes. The podcast stuff is what I do week to week, but I don't really have time to play a lot of other games. So I kind of do it all at the end of the year, all at once. Usually I'll finish like 3 or 4 games in a few days, and like I played all of God of War maybe last year, or the year before. Can't remember when. I think it was last holiday break though. So
the new one,
the new one, the 2018 or whatever. So
we'll have fun in all those Resident Evils.
Resident Evil.
Yeah. I'm glad we played this one. It was again the bell tolling and that big guy just leaping off and into and going toward the castle is the skybox the castle in the skybox is perfectly framed in the village all the time. Like they're even looking really up through holes in some of the roofs that you're inside some of the houses. You see some of the spires of the castle. It's very Castlevania looking, and they just it's just that great reminder, similar to the church tower in in 4, right? It's very it's an homage, almost feels like. Yeah, but the modern version.
Yep, I would totally agree, and I do look forward to playing more of it. So yeah, that's our kind of our bonus notes on a modern Resident Evil, the most modern Resident Evil. Maybe I'll touch back with that other stuff, towards the end of the year if I have a chance to play, and we can mention it. Just to say, hey,
I'll come back to it.
Did play this, so. Well, let's start catching up on some email. We had a bunch of set us up with 4 tonight. I don't know if we'll get to all 4 because sometimes these have questions in them. They end up taking longer than expected. But they were, of course, sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. I checked before, and I don't think I saw any new reviews. I will double check to make sure I am right on that. Yep, no, nothing new on that. But we do, of course, like those as well. We love to read that stuff on the podcast if you have a chance. Why don't you go ahead with that first email? Yeah, these are all quite long, too. So I don't know if we'll get through all 4 of them. But we'll catch up to them eventually.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so first one is The Left Hand of Darkness from Sasha Vasari. Hey, my first memory of Resident Evil 4 was at a friend's house when it was brand new. I tried to have a boat fight with a crocodile catfish or something. Yeah, that's pretty much sums it up.
Yep.
That's a good description, crocodile catfish. Maybe 6 years later, I got it on my Wii, but it wasn't until 2020 that I actually finished it. Wow. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Since 2020, I've been playing through several other Resident Evil titles, totally compelled. The pandemic has really made me feel at home with survival horror. Huh. Okay. Interesting. This is great mail. I often get home and just want to jump into a Rezev. Yeah, they're being clever. Resident Evil game, or watch something with monsters or zombies. When I told this to my mom, she said that it's perfectly healthy, that I'm exploring the dark side in a positive way. What do you think? Also, I'm turning 25 at the end of the month. I like how you guys always, you guys are always playing through things from my childhood. All of them feel so familiar, even when I haven't played them. And it's a good excuse to revisit old favorites. However, when I slid Ratchet and Clank into the beloved PS2, what the screen shown back at me was a pretty complicated feeling. Back in like 2003, I had played the demo disc that started me off in the Metropolis level. In my memory, there had been flying cars absolutely filling the sky, and the level, the polish, and the graphics had been beyond anything I'd seen before. But coming back to it this year, wow, everything looked so plain, so sparse. It was quite confusing. Now I have 2 different versions of the game in my mind: the gorgeous ideal and humble of and the humble reality. The gorgeous ideal and the humble reality. It's weird and a little sad. As for BioShock, that game was way too scary, or too shadowy maybe. My sister and I played the beginning at an uncle's house, probably in 2008. We got as far as the medical center. The lights went out, and that was quite enough. Thank you very much. That was quite enough. Thank you very much. But nowadays, despite remaining kind of scary, it feels very cartoony and maybe too contrived. And I agree, it does. By contrast, I think Resident Evil 4 hasn't changed at all. It conveys exactly the same mood I remember from the first moment I saw it, like pretty thrilling, a bit silly, and still somehow steeped in tension. The arcadey feel, the gritty art design, and the touches of quiet humor all strike a unique balance and really give it lasting appeal. Although compared to RE2 or 1, it doesn't provide the same catharsis or sense of reclaiming frightening space. Cheers to you, Sasha Vasari, a.k.a. Truffles Mochaccino from the previous mail. Not sure which my real name is. Thanks, Sasha.
Yeah,
great mail.
I mean,
a lot of questions.
Yeah, great mail. A lot of questions and thoughts in there. I will say, of course, who am I to gainsay your mom? Your mom, I should say. It sounds like or maybe somebody from the British Isles or Ireland or something here. But or at least European. Yeah, sure. You're exploring the dark side in a positive way. I do that for sure. So, it's perfectly healthy.
I think there's an outlet there too, right? I think the pandemic has been such an impact on everybody. Everyone's looking for outlets to sort of, I think, because games are about control. Like, you are in control. You can control.
You can turn it off if you want.
Yeah, you can't control the pandemic. You can control the T virus.
Right.
Well, apparently,
Las Plagas.
Sometimes you can, but it always comes back.
It always comes back.
So maybe you can't.
But you can always turn off the T virus too, right? I mean, to get to that, like literally that level of control. But all the games, of course, are about at least beating it back for a while too. So there's that too, right? It's very rare. There are other horror games, and actually I know one of them you talked about on your stream because we got some email about it for a possible next year Halloween, scary game, that have endings that are more straight horror, like that are not, you don't win, like, or you're left in a place where like, this is not a victory. But the RE games are not really that. They might be difficult to it might feel like you really had to fight your way there, for sure. But they are about sort of a complete, in the end, you are successful, right? And you're getting out of the situation. You're escaping with Ashley, or you're dealing with Lisa, or what have you.
Riding a jet ski.
You're riding a jet ski into the sunset on this lake / ocean / ? But you're getting out of there. So yeah, I think it's perfectly healthy. Survival horror is, as much as it's about horror, it's also about survival, right? So, it's a real thing to be able to control, and that's a nice part of it for sure. I agree with your mom, wise woman.
On that jet ski, they probably could have gotten maybe 5 miles or so. I mean, like,
how far can you really go on a jet ski?
If you're in the ocean, like, you better see the land where you're headed.
The next horror story is what happened, when they ran out of food. And
no, they actually hit this tower, that's spire that's coming out of the ocean, and there's a plane
I
crash.
see, right? Yes,
and then they're like, "Oh, what is this?" And they go downstairs.
What's this door?
There's a bathysphere.
There's always a door and a key and a man, or I forget what it is. It's always a lighthouse and a key and a door. I can't remember.
Oh, right, yeah, right.
Whatever it is in Infinite, there's always there's a door, a man, and a key. I don't know. Anyway, I can never remember this. I just played that a few weeks ago. I have no idea.
Yeah, I remember you
terrible.
mentioning it.
Yeah. And to the Ratchet and Clank point, I do think like things really stand out against the background they're set. So the background today is much more detail, much more going on. And so it stands out in a negative way, right? Compared to what you're seeing as sort of the background. So I think that's part of it too. Things that are different from the background definitely stand out in that way, right? So, I mean, I think that's one of the things with us is that we're playing all these older games, and so the background for me is often not terribly different from what it is, and so those things do stand out. So for me, playing Ratchet and Clank sort of in situ or close to these other games, it's like, oh yeah, look how vibrant and like look how much is going on, how many things are moving and whatever, it feels really active. But that's because my background of like the other things I'm playing is not super high fidelity, right? So I think that's a thing that happens.
Time.
Right. Exactly.
Not far before that. Yeah. Not long
exactly.
Before that. Yeah. I think the other thing that the podcast has helped me with somewhat too, to Sasha's point, is that more than before we started the podcast, I now, when we play these older games, I'm doing a better job at placing them a little bit better in context for when they had come out or when I had played them in the past. Like an example being Hitman 2, when we played that, it was on my mind recently. And, that is a janky game, right? And it does not hold up well, but because we're analyzing it, and I don't know if this will help you, Sasha, but it's like, Yeah, I don't think you're really gonna ever kind of very often, although he does say Resident Evil holds up, and I can see that. But for a lot
I
of
think she, but yeah,
oh she, sorry, yeah, yeah, or they, I'll say,
yeah,
um, but for the most part, when you go too far back, it's like it's kind of never gonna quite live up to your mind's memory and imagination of what it was. But if you can try to place it in the context of where you were and why it was so important to you. Another game that nobody's played probably called Trespasser is one that a friend of the podcast, Reed, and I talk a lot about. And, it probably doesn't hold up either, but it's a significant game to me. And so I just have that memory that I hold on to, even though I know that when I go back to it someday, it's not going to live up.
Yeah, that one's going to be a tricky one. I do feel like we probably should play it.
Yeah.
I do really I think it is a forerunner of so many things. So it's just like, I don't know. It feels because it was trying things. It was pitching way above, or hitting way above its weight, I should say. So it does feel like, and yeah, it's janky and a mess, and like, but they were trying such grand things. Yeah, that was that later Xbox Evangelist. I think that was his game.
Seamus
Blackley. Yep. Blackley. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He was out of his depth on that. I mean, I think he's admitted as much in interviews and stuff. Let's move on now. Thanks, Sasha or Truffles. The subject is the limits of tolerance in gaming, ? From JJ. Hey, folks. Thanks for running such a consistently thoughtful and interesting podcast. It really makes my week every week. I'm playing along with the show for the first time. Resident Evil 4 is pretty great and has suited this dreary Pacific Northwest early November weather perfectly. So you got a neighbor there, Tim. As you've both mentioned, the game's gender politics are pretty darn dated, namely the representation and diegetic and non-diegetic commentary on Ashley. Re the very problematic ballistics achievement. I also noticed Ashley will yell, "Hey, what are you looking at?" if you're knocked to the ground in close proximity to her. Ugh. I'm a big retro video game fan, but often struggle with moments like these in older games and games in general. So, 2 questions. 1, how do you each grapple with the problematic legacies that many games, or any works of art for that matter, leave? Another way to ask that might be, how do you separate the importance/values of seminal games in the video game canon while simultaneously admonishing key decisions made by the creators of those very games? And 2, have there been any games that you considered featuring on your show but decided not to because of these very reasons? I'm reminded of Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance, whereby in order to maintain a tolerant society, that society must be intolerant of intolerance. I continue to struggle personally with that idea in literature, film, television, and gaming, and would love to hear both of your thoughts. Keep up the great work and take care of yourselves. All the best, JJ. Thank you for your kind words, first of all, and we are taking care of yourselves, and you should do the same. So we'll do that, get that out of the way. But yeah, problematic legacies and problematic art, etc. What are your thoughts? I certainly have some, so I can jump in if you don't have immediate thoughts.
I don't know, a couple immediate ones, but you should probably jump in and I'll think some more about it. But I mean, at least on the podcast, and I think in general, I try to, like, the most important thing is to call it out and to speak and we try to not dwell on it, but we at least try to bring it up in the podcast, but it's important to do that. I think the second thing, and to just basically just surface it, right, and to not not dance around it or not to apologize or anything like that, because it's needs to be pointed out. The other thing that I try to be careful with, and I'm not always careful with, is how we choose to support those things. So even if we play them on the podcast, like how are we acquiring them, and things like that. So we did purchase, it's like you kind of, there's only so many mechanisms you can apart from protest or what have you to sort of put your money where your mouth is, quite literally. And so that's something, like, to give you an example, I'm not a big fan of Rockstar games. I don't play them generally. There's been some exceptions. and I don't buy them very often. Sometimes, again, some exceptions. And we did debate playing GTA 3 on the podcast. We ultimately decided to do it, but the reason that one of the main reasons we debated it was because of the content. And it wasn't an easy decision, and whether we made the right decision or not, I don't know, but it was at least talked about and almost didn't make the cut because we didn't want to kind of support that side of things. And ironically, we were just talking in pre-show about what possible future games, and an Activision Blizzard game came up, an old one, and both of us were like, yeah, that's not, not
right now. You just can't do it right now,
No. Yeah. And that's, that's a decision, behind the scenes decision that we wouldn't normally have brought up on air. But to give you an example of kind of like, you got to try to think things through a little bit like that and not give them any more press or what have you.
Yeah. I mean, for me, a lot of what you said is exactly what I would have said, in terms of, not, bringing it up, thinking about it critically, talking about it critically. I mean, we talk about those things just as critically as we talk about mechanics and other things on the show. And I think it's important to say, like, we had some feedback recently in a review that we didn't read on the air because it was clearly a person with their own agenda, which came through very clearly. Thank you very much in your review. And the word soy was used. So, you can kind of get already where these folks are coming from. But they made an argument that, like, well, these are just, parroting games or movies rather from the 80s. And it's like, yes, and those were also bad for the same reasons. That's not an excuse. We're not going to excuse this art for being off-putting to large, parts of the population, for being really just juvenile about things and being really, really poor at representation of people. We're just not. Like, I had a conversation with somebody today, actually, where I was exposed to a common experience that some gamers have online. I'm just being vague because I don't want to surface the specifics. And there's a lot of, and it was stuff that I've never had to deal with, largely because I no longer play games really online because I don't like that environment. And I haven't, like I was mentioning that Chris Corey and I, to this person, we're on the first day of Xbox Live, and we're like, oh my God, like what it was like, how toxic that atmosphere was like, jumping in and playing whatever it was at the time. It might have even, I don't remember, but it was like voice connected thing. And I just remember, and Chris is no shrinking violet about things like language and whatever. And, he was often very, used a lot of swears and stuff, like enjoyed it. And at the same time we were like, you don't know what, like, this is really bizarre, horrible behavior. And I remember that at that time being like, oh yeah, I don't want to ever be a part of that. Like I was turned off on the big online gaming revolution at the beginning, and I've only really played with my friends ever since, for the last, 17 years or whatever. So I totally get it. So yeah, I mean, there are games that we've considered, and yeah, that one almost didn't make it. There are probably some that we've just said, yeah, no. I can't remember any specifics, but I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, I think we just have to be frank about it and say, hey, you need to do better. Like we need to do better.
Yeah, two white dudes talking about this stuff is a whole nother, right? It's like we have to like try to support the people around us who are not us, and do the best we can to call
and bring in more people that are not like us. And that is a thing that we really consider. We really search for people who are underrepresented to come as interviewees as well. So we're not always able to get that, and it can be very hard. And so you just want to talk more in depth, and it, especially the further back you go, the harder it is to find non-white, non-men, none of either really, that just becomes very difficult just because of what the industry has been like for so long. But we are, actively, both of us, working to to counteract that in our day-to-day life and the choices we make, where we're working now. So yeah, those are things, I guess. The other thing too is if somebody else brings it up, like, hey, that was pretty lousy, to be really open to that perspective, as well, because we can't be in the position of those people experiencing that thing. And so we need to listen. Like, we can shut up at that point and not say, oh, I didn't experience that. Just listen and say, oh, you experienced that. Please tell me more, as I think a good step to make as well. And that's definitely a thing that I think we need to see more of. So it is actually, I think, a problem with a lot of the corporate responses to allegations over the last couple of years in the games industry, is that they're not stepping back and saying, please tell us, let's air it out, let's open it, let's, sunlight's the best disinfectant. No, it's very like, they're turtling, right? They're trying to make it go away. They're trying to just stay quiet long enough for it to go away. And I think that's absolutely the wrong approach for the health of our industry and for the health of, the games that we make. So, and their, approachability to others. So I don't know. Those are all my back of the envelope thoughts, I guess.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. No, it's all I'm agreeing.
All right. I actually think we'll call it there, even though we do have a couple more emails, because I know Tim likes to have at least a couple minutes between recording and going on stream. So I will just end it there for tonight. Thanks for coming along. Those emails were, of course, sent to devgameclub@gmail.com, and I already mentioned how much we love your reviews. Just if we don't happen to read them, it's probably because we didn't see them. So just point us in their direction, and we'll chase them down. Or you can just email them in as well. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub. You can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
He is streaming Resident Evil apparently 7 on twitch.tv/Tim Longo Jr. And I am also, I'm tempted to follow along so I can remember what the heck happened story-wise in that game. I remember the end, and I remember definite stuff about the beginning, but like this whole thing with his wife that you'll see, I would like, oh yeah, like watching that thing, I was like, oh yeah, that's what that was about. But there's other stuff too that I'm like, oh, there's a really cool thing in the middle. It involved a film crew. Like, there's just a lot of stuff where I'm like, it'll be kind of cool to touch in with you on that one from time to time.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So enjoy. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, of course, is by Mark Garcia. Have fun stealing golden gears off horses this week, and good night.
Good night.